special meeting of the SVUESD. I'll announce who is in the room. So it's myself, Chris Murphy. We also have board members. We have, I see Dick, Chayla, Scott, and Cindy on this, as well as Jim and Richard. So I think that rounds us out. What I'd like to do first is to amend the agenda. So this meeting was called for the board to review and approve a letter to be sent asking assistance from our legislators and getting some guidance from AOE. But given Jim's email from yesterday afternoon, I'm happy to say that guidance has come forth finally. What I'd like to do, please, is to amend the agenda to remove the discussion of the potential letter, which we no longer need, and instead replace that with an agenda item, basically a question and answer session of Jim. So I would entertain that motion, please, to amend the agenda as described.
Second.
So it's Dick and Cindy. Any further discussion on amending the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor of amending the agenda, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Very good. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes and our agenda is amended. The first agenda item remains public comments. And since I don't see any members of the public here, we can move on to our question and answer period. So, I mean, I was happy to see the email, Jim, and the links from AOE. I don't know that it answers all of the questions yet, but it's way better than where we were. So it's also an awful lot to digest, and I don't know how much time people have been able to spend with that since yesterday afternoon. But I would open the floor for anyone who has questions of our superintendent regarding the content of that. Actually, prior to which, Jim, we'll turn it over to you if there's anything else you want to add to what you included in that email, please.
Well, I would love to get the pulse of the board on how you feel about. I mean, I'm getting emails from parents who are, think that it would be ridiculous if we did anything but remote learning, and then I get emails from people saying that we must return our students to school, particularly our elementary students, which Dan French said in his comments to the superintendent yesterday, and how much of that is also autonomy driven, that they need to be able to return to work. They need childcare for elementary students. And, our thoughts had been, if we do a hybrid model, which is 2 days physically in school and 2 days remotely, and then 1 day to clean and reset. So students would basically be remote learning 3 days a week. We had at first thought only doing it for high school and middle school because of the numbers, because of trying to keep social distance requirements at such a large school was really difficult. Not that it wouldn't be at Molly Stark either, but that elementary, because they always already function as cohort groups. You pretty much stay in your classroom with your students. Where at the high school, middle school, they move around from class to class, and who you take English with isn't who you take math with. So that would just be a disaster. So our thought was just to do the 50-50 of the middle of high school, but then we thought, well, with families, now it's got to be all or one. So that's where we're leaning towards, that if we do return, it's going to be 50% students, 50% of them would come Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday may be the break day, and then 50% come Thursday, Friday, or it could be Monday through Thursday, with Friday being the deep clean day. That's something. But I would love to hear how the board feels about that model, or do you prefer that we're all in physically in the building, or you want us operating remotely till we have a better idea of where the virus is?
Question: How do the professionals in the buildings feel about this? Because you don't want to end up with that fight in your face.
So I specifically asked Dan French that question yesterday in our meeting, because we have heard that the Vermont NEA did a survey of their members, and only 21%, I think I said this in my email to people last Friday or earlier this week, that only 21% of those responding indicated they feel safe to return to work. So I did ask the Secretary of Education, have you had any meetings with the Vermont NEA? And are there any indications, because we have, we've all seen in the national news how Some teachers unions are indicating they are not going to return to work. And he said he had discussions with, he said, if I recall correctly, no indication that Vermont NEA is saying that at this time, but I think there is, reluctance. The other thing that came out of yesterday's meeting is there may be, under the return plan, we're going to have to take the temperature of every student getting on a school bus. And the bus driver can't do it, which means like we'd have to put a monitor on the bus with a thermometer. But other states aren't requiring that. And the secretary indicated yesterday that Vermont Department of Health is rethinking that guidance, because taking temperature is not necessarily an indication that, because you can be a carrier and not have symptoms. And that's, so taking a temperature will do nothing for that person. So I don't know if that really answers your question, Dick, but yeah, I think there is, I meet weekly with the presidents of both unions. We meet every Tuesday at 1:00. I have asked them that same question, and they're the ones that did tell me about that survey. I think they're closely watching what our plans are, but we have them involved in our plans too.
Can I ask one more? I think you're trying to answer everybody's concerns and get people back in the building and be safe at the same time. We won't know if any of this works at all unless we try some kind of hybrid model, which I would be in favor of. But how fast can you change over if the hybrid model doesn't work? For example, teachers don't show up. Enough students don't show up. Social distancing isn't working. Any of a number of things. How fast can you change over to remote only? Or
I think pretty quickly, because what we are doing, we are putting in a large purchase for more Chromebooks to, replace some of the ones that were aging out anyways. It's, I think about $330,000 worth of Chromebooks is district-wide what we'll be purchasing. Most of that is accounted for in the budget, and from the email I told you yesterday, those purchases we can use CARES Act money for, but remember, CARES Act isn't extra money. It's just going to replace what was in our budget. I'm confident that we can make those purchases from what we already have budgeted. So we will be ready. We will be ready to go to remote learning fairly quickly, and that's been clear from the beginning, even from the guidance from the state, that we need to maintain. And hopefully, we've learned even lessons from where we were in the spring, that it would be even better, because remote learning may not be remote for all. We may have to do, some pullouts and specials that continue to come into the building for services, or people going out to them, or doing virtual services, particularly around special education. So it won't be, it's not ideal, but we're also maintaining our remote capabilities.
Jim, I think the people that I've been most closely interacting with and talking to all understand the importance of getting the kids back into school. And this would include my wife and I as well. Understand the importance of getting the kids back into school, but also are really worried about doing so. You've got things like, there were a lot of discussions like, well, it really doesn't bounce around and spread among kids as much. And that was what people were using for a while. But then we're seeing that happening in Manchester right this minute with kids in sports and kids interacting with one another. And then, we think about grandparents and, my wife saying, if they go back, I'm not sure I'm going to feel comfortable seeing them in that process, because we don't know whether, just because they're not maybe showing symptoms because they're children doesn't mean that they can't pass it along. And so I think with that, there's been with the people that I'm talking to, a real hope that there can be either the hybrid model or a full, for those that choose to keep their kids home and have the ability to work remotely and also parent and be a parent teacher, having those resources to allow the kids to do that, which I've noticed in the charts that seems as though that opportunity will be there. Though I think they're also saying that the remote learning that we experienced in the spring was adequate given everything that was going on and how quickly it all had to come together. However, if it's looking to be much more long-term, the hope of having like the full curriculum presented to the kids so that they can work through it and not getting, 2 pages to work on for the week. And if they get done on the first 2 days, they're done for they don't have work to do for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And then also having the platforms for that online remote learning much more dialed in so that you don't try and use one platform for one thing, another platform for another thing, and really having the kids bounce around, which was a challenge for a number of parents. So if I think that's the other thing is if we were to go with the remote learning, getting things a little bit more dialed in, which I'm not sure you've had the time to do. I mean, the teachers are off for this.
So thank you for actually bringing that point up, because I am fully committed that we will offer full, even if we do a hybrid model or we at some point return to full in-building students, that option is going to be there for families that want to continue remote learning. And all our administrators know that is there. We have to, I don't know what that looks like yet, but it's got to be committed, because we don't want to lose students. We want them to still remain our students. I don't want them to, we might lose some people, and I'm very worried about that. So we will continue a full remote option for those who want to opt out of in-person. And that was, so this is where I think that we will be better on the remote learning. When we go remote, it's our intent, even if we're the teachers and staff will be in the building, because we will be able to socially distance with the teachers and staff. So then they will have that network of staff, and so they won't necessarily all have to be Zooming and remoting with each other. So it will allow for better support structure. Obviously there are staff members who will have the right, particularly anybody who may be compromised, would have the right to continue to work remotely. But our intent, if we became remote, because the difference is our buildings got shut down in the spring. Yeah, we can reopen and still keep socially distanced. It's when we bring in hundreds of students that becomes a problem. So I think that alone will be a major improvement on how we operate remotely.
Yeah, you can't. Sorry, Chris. You can't expect. Well, I agree on the losing students, and I do know that there's a large push of parents and kids that are looking at other long-time online learning platforms, whether Oak Meadow or similar. And in fact, I went up and saw Oak Meadow is sending the entire curriculum for the entire year to those kids. They have the ability to do it. What's making them feel comfortable at this time, and it's mostly in absence of a true plan for what ours will look like. And it's just something to think about. Obviously, I know you're thinking about it.
Yeah, and concerned about the equity of that option, because there's a cost associated with that, and not everyone can avail themselves of that.
Right.
And I also think it'd be beneficial if we have the opportunity with the teachers in the classrooms to do more of that Zoom instruction, potentially setting up some sort of ability for them to be actually instructing on Zoom if we're in that virtual model, because I think that to some extent is some of what parents have concern with, is like that missing instruction and the almost need for the children to kind of be on their own, especially when you're getting up to those higher levels.
And Jim, the option for families to do remote only, will that not count against the attendance requirement that Dan French outlined in those attachments you included?
Well, yes, because if they're engaged in remote learning and we can document they are, then that student, we would consider that student in school. And the attendance, surprisingly, in that you read those documents, I mean, that it's considered a school day if 51% of the students are in attendance seems pretty lenient to me. But that, that was before pre-COVID too. I mean, that was state guidance. So the day would count if 51% of the students were in attendance. And if we can document that they're, as I said, they can document that they're working remotely, then they are in school. They're attending.
And then when you talk about the students being in school 2 days a week, would that be, let's take a third grade class. Would that be every single third grader assigned to that third grade class present at the same time for 2 days a week? Or would it look like something, half of that third grade class is present for 2 days a week while their other half distance learns, and then the reverse happens at the tail end of the week?
Yeah, it's your the second option is that you described is the way it would be. So let's say a teacher has 20 students in their first grade class, 10 of them would come on Monday, Tuesday, and 10 of them would come on the other two.
Okay, which sounds like probably the only way to ensure anything close to social distancing in the classroom, is to cut the number of students in half. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think without a doubt there's the emotional wellness of our students to consider, and the normalcy of attending school on a regular basis and seeing their friends and having that routine. I think all of that is super important, and I honestly haven't thought of another way to replicate that other than returning to school physically. That's the emotional wellness. The physical piece, the physical health is a different piece altogether. And I think the only way for us to really fully do the best we can with that is to have them not attend at all. So it's, as any parents who might be hearing this has already experienced, like, it's finding that balance between the physical safety and health and the emotional wellness of their kids during this time. And you see it on social media, you hear people say it. Absolutely, teachers are not babysitters. And at the same time, we have built our entire society around most folks working during the time when their kids are being supervised and taught at school. And so even though we should not be looking at our teachers as babysitters, we can't get around the fact that many families do use school as childcare because that's how their employers have structured their work. So I feel like as is the case in many situations, we are facing a number of factors that we have very little control over. And it's trying to find the best decision for our students and for our staff and for our families. So I hope everyone got a chance to see the story in the banner yesterday that outlined part of the school reopening planning work. And Jim had talked about that in his emails as well. But if you haven't checked that out, please do look at those, because that has good information in it as well. And what I didn't realize until reading the paper yesterday was how large a planning group that is. So truly, there are a lot of minds on this and a lot of people looking at it from different perspectives, which is going to be huge as we find the best plan moving forward.
So we actually have at least 3 planning teams together, because we have the elementary planning team, we have the middle high school plan, and we also have a team looking at athletics. And then they report to another group. So the sheer number of people involved between school nurses, maintenance staff, Abbey Group, the bus company, teachers, central office administrators, building-based administrators. There's a lot of, we're trying to gather as many thoughts and minds on this as possible.
Jim, one other question about the funding that's going to be coming in, the CARES money. There was a list of 3 or 4 items that the CARES money cannot be used for. Is that an exhaustive list, or are there other things that CARES money cannot be used for that was not captured on that list?
So I'm going to defer to the Director of Finance and Operations, who is digging deeper into that.
Okay.
So I would say it's not an exhaustive list, because so much of this is being written this guidance is being written as we speak. So you may see other exemptions as we go forward.
Okay. So, folks, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time and recognizing this is taking place during many people's workday. So, unless there's something else very pressing, I'd like to keep it to this 20 minutes and adjourn our meeting now. But certainly, now that it feels like the wheels are finally in motion. Now that we've got some guidance from AOE, and so I hope everyone can be flexible and maybe holding more quick meetings like this for us to have updates and conversations as develops. So if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Dick, okay, so Dick first, and I think that was Scott with the second first. So any further discussion on adjourning our meeting? Okay, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. So thank you again, everyone, for making this work this morning. And yeah, let's all talk soon.
Before we leave, can I ask, did Richard get a list of everybody who's present?
Yeah, I read it out. Richard, do you want me to repeat it?
I think maybe he already left.
Okay. Well, fine. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'm recording
Thanks.
it
You will,
anyways.
guys.
We can always